class. This lectures on some of the main themes and the symbolism in the Watchmen, which is considered the greatest comic ever written. I would like to point out that, you know, most of the characters are associated with politics, as we, you know, said earlier during the character lecture. Although I did forget to point out that Lori Jupiter and Dan Dryberg are associated with, you know, liberalism, but not quite as far as Adrian Veidt. But there are also some other symbols associated with these characters. Now, we talked about the goggles, you know, with Dan Dryberg, and then, you know, the flashlight with Rorschach and the ability to see the truth, but also associated with Dr. Manhattan is clocks and the Doomsday Clock. Now, the Doomsday Clock is a real thing, and it is there's a panel of world scientists who you know, have the Doomsday Clock. I think it's in Geneva, and it is right now. I don't know if you guys know, but just like in the comic book, it is at 1 minute to midnight. Now, previously it was at 5 minutes to midnight during the arms race between Russia and America, in reality, not in the comic book. But because of climate change and all the species dying on the planet, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're in the 6th great extinction of the Earth now, and it's, nobody's really talking about it, but the UN is extremely concerned that if we don't turn things around in the next 2 years, the entire, you know, life cycle chain of all species on this planet is going to collapse. They're more worried about it than climate change. But again, you know, as long as the oil and gas money pours in, nobody really cares. So the scientists have currently moved the Doomsday Clock up to 1 minute to midnight due to climate change and species extinction. And that's what we've got going on in this book, except for it's, you know, due to nuclear war. And so, you know, you're going to see the clock associated with John Osterman. You're going to see clocks appear over and over and over again throughout the comic book. Also, you know, Dr. Manhattan gets associated with stars. And, you know, I think I forgot to mention that in this character analysis. But, you know, when we see the light from a star, we're actually seeing it years behind or minutes behind, depending on which star we're talking about. And that's the same thing with Dr. Manhattan, the way he sees, you know, things, you know, in the present, but it's really the past, and, you know, it gets a little confusing. What stars are associated with him. There are many other symbols and, you know, things throughout. You'll see hidden. You'll see references to Nietzsche throughout this comic. Like you'll see a little sign that says "God is dead," but in slightly different wording. Excuse me. You know, we see, you know, fallout shelters and all these things that kind of, you know, indicate, you know, the end of things. But one thing is interesting is outside of Night Owl One's, you know, building is a sign that tells you what he does for a living, and he fixes obsolete cars. And this is interesting because, you know, superheroes are made obsolete by the government, and also, you know, Alan Moore is writing this comic book, and he's saying that the old way of writing comic books and treating superheroes is also obsolete. So that's kind of a nice little double jab as well. Now, the shark in the Black Freighter series, you know, kind of also represents this fear of Adrian Veidt. You know, this, you know, the issue within him that's the fear of everything dying that causes him to consume all his buddies in the same way that the sailor has strapped his buddies under this raft and it's consumed by the shark. If you'll notice, it's what takes over the driving of the raft, which is, you know, symbolic of the way Adrian Veidt's fear of everything falling apart has taken over, you know, his own psychology and has forced him to do this. Now, some of you guys may have skipped over the little, you know, kind of long typed out supplemental information that's in between the books But it's extremely interesting because it goes into a lot of that deals with the deconstruction of the superhero. And if you're writing a research paper, that's going to be a good source for you because it humanizes them. Especially the book written by the original Night Owl, Hollis Mason, because it talks about all the issues they had, all the flaws they had, how some were insane, some some ended up becoming alcoholics and drug abusers, and they're all essentially perverts. And one thing that's interesting about this comic is that it takes the idea of putting on the mask and the superhero outfit, and it kind of sexualizes it because in literature, typically, like whether it's Shakespeare or whatever, when people wear a mask or hide their identity, they're able to be who they truly are, and they lose their inhibitions. And I think that's why Halloween's such a fun holiday if you're single, because people put on an outfit and then they do things they don't normally wouldn't normally do. So but anyways, another thing that's that kind of bookends this thing and starts it is the journal by Rorschach. It ultimately is what starts this whole thing. I mean, we're essentially reading the story through his journal, and it's the vehicle that ends up letting us know, the truth about how Adrian Veidt tricked everybody. So it's kind of like a cliffhanger, like, will humans repeat their mistakes, or will they learn from what they did, through Rorschach's journal, and finally, fulfill Rorschach's expectations of dealing with the truth and getting over their flaws and weaknesses by their own strength instead of through the trickery of Veidt. So that book is an important thing. As you can see from V for Vendetta, the idea of art and literature and books are the only way we derive meaning in life instead of religion. So that theme's carrying over again. Excuse me. Let's see. What else am I forgetting? Music and song lyrics and little quotes and references from Albert Einstein and Bob Dylan always have to do with what's going on in the chapter. Those are kind of neat to look at. And, well, that's about it.